Vulnerable teenagers have been dumped and abandoned in hotels by councils in England. We're going to read into this more from The Guardian, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from The Guardian with the headline of Vulnerable Teenagers have been dumped and abandoned in hotels by councils in England. Campaigners say cash-strapped local authorities are placing young people in budget accommodations and making them target for grooming by criminal gangs. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. So I've talked in the past about the cash-strapped councils and the situations that many of them are in, and I think anybody who's been paying attention to the news, paying attention to politics, you will be fully aware that our councils up and down the country here in England have been really struggling. Now, it's easy to say that, yes, some of this has been by perhaps mismanagements of certain political parties running them, councils like Labour councils or Lib Dems, and even Conservative ones. But it is also important to regurgitate and reiterate this very important point that many people miss out whenever they attack Labour here, is that the funding for councils, the funding that comes from public service, the funding that basically for running this basic essential needs in your area comes from the government. And from 2010 onwards to now, we have had severe cuts to every single council in England. Every single council has had significant cuts to their budgets to do that. On top of that, the funding that we used to receive from the European Union, that has also gone as well. And much of that funding as well that we used to get as subsidies from being part of the European Union, that would go towards councils, that would go towards some of the poorest areas, that help renovate and big them up, they are gone. That funding has also gone too. So that has added on top of already what was austerity on top of that. Whether you agree or disagree about the decision to leave the European Union, that funding has also gone. So not only have councils suffered loss of funding as a result of the austerity imposed on them by the Conservative government, but also the funding they lost when we left the European Union as well. Now, in some cases, in some constituencies, some of that money has some, and I say this with a big pinch of salt, some constituencies have had a little bit of money given back by the government to help recoup it, but most have not, especially Labour ones. So this idea and premise that everything is what's happening in the last 14 years is essentially Labour's fault is complete and utter nonsense. It really is not, guys. It really is. It's not rocket science to understand that when councils lose funding, and then on top of that, you lose funding from the EU, you're going to struggle to manage your finances. It's going to be difficult, and cuts had to be made. And then when you point the finger at Labour for saying why they cutting this, why they cutting that in your local area, the question you should be asking is, well, you asked for this because you voted for austerity. So it's a very important point to make. And this is where another thing comes into play here about vulnerable teenagers being dumped and abandoned in hotels by councils. Because, like I said, local authorities are struggling when it comes to money. We know we have a housing crisis at the moment. We're fully aware of that. This is, yes, immigration is having an impact on that, but that is not the main crux of it. Like I said, one of the main cruxes is the government's continuous failure to build new homes. That's a play in a part of that. But also one of the other things as well is that reinvigorating homes that we already have in this country. We have many, many homes that are simply not incinerated, that are full of mold, damp, are in really uncomfortable, really just terrible, poor conditions that not even you want your own dog here to be living in. Yeah, we have homes in such inhumane conditions. It is pretty disgusting to say the least. And this is a desperate attempt by the council to try and keep on top of what is an impossible situation for them. Whatever political party the councils are running from, Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem, whatever, they're all struggling with this situation. So what is the solution here? Right now, doesn't appear to be one because of the situation we're in. Everybody is waiting for a general election. Everyone wants to know what Labour are going to do when they come into government. Everyone's waiting for the manifesto for that. The Conservatives are kind of just their eyes are all on Rwanda and immigration, and they're not even paying attention to the cost of living crisis that we are in. So the government are not there to are not actually there to help people. Hence why it still baffles me why people will still choose to vote Conservative and not think about this. And a lot of these young vulnerable teenagers, people will easily say, oh, it's their own fault, they put themselves in this situation, they should have worked harder and whatnot. Well, some situations where there are cases where it's just beyond their control, there are all sorts of factors mitigating to them. One of them could be the no faults eviction, where people are basically kicked out of their place by the landlords, given only 2 months' notice, and because for whatever reason the landlord wants them out, not given enough time to be able to find another home, and then they find themselves on the street, ended up going to the council for help, and then they find themselves in these situations now. Not everybody has friends and family, not everybody has somebody they can turn to for help, and I think that's a really important point to highlight. So lots of factors are playing in when we talk about vulnerable people. And while we are talking specifically about vulnerable teenagers, let's also remember that there are lots of vulnerable adults as well, who are also in this situation as well. So it's very important to make that as well. So let's read some of this into this, you guys. So vulnerable teenagers in care are being placed in hotels by cash-strapped councils, with experts warning them being served up to criminal gangs. Children aged 16 to 17 are entering care in greater numbers than any other age group, often with complex needs, and experts say many councils in England have nowhere to put them. They're increasingly resorting to budget hotels with no adult support as a way of cutting costs and keeping teenagers off the street. One teenager who lived in a hotel for 6 months, who was asked to remain anonymous, said, "It was full of older men who drink and fight all the time. I called my social worker numerous times begging her to find me somewhere safe to live. She said there wasn't anywhere else." The girl ate biscuits and instant noodles because she could not cook in her room and felt increasingly isolated because there was no Wi-Fi. She said there was music blaring all night, and she's now on medication for severe depression, and said the experience made her feel like nobody cares about us. A situation this is the thing, she's in a situation where she has barely any money, she's unable to cook, she's in a really terrible place. There's people who are in an area where people fight all the time and blaring music and all this. This is mentally not good for their health. And now this person is now taking medication for depression because of being put in this situation. But the argument will be from the council is that obviously they had nowhere else to put them. Now, I'm not, that's the difficulty here we have right now when it comes to the shortage of homes. By the way, that's not an excuse whatsoever to put this person in this situation either. Children's social care is widely understood to be the single biggest factor pushing England councils towards bankruptcy, as increasing number of young people are being taken into care coincide with steep fees for private children's home. More than 8% of children's homes in England and Wales are now run to make a profit, with many owned by private equity companies. A 2023 survey by the local government association found more than 1,500 placements costing at least £10,000 a child a week. Chris Wilde, who grew up in care and campaigns for better support for care experience when young, he said he is finding an increasingly number of 16 and 17-year-olds across the country who have been put in budget hotels by their local council. Imagine being 16 to 18-year-olds and this is your reality, dumped and abandoned by the state, he said, forgotten and left to your own devices in a room with no support whatsoever. Wild said that councils gave these children food vouchers but only had a kettle in their rooms when they were surviving on cups of soup and pot noodles. He warned that with no adult supervision, they were vulnerable to be groomed by gangs and other predators. Yeah, this is a really extremely dangerous. And one of the things that really just throws me off there is the fact that know how to have access to the internet. That's a big one. A lot of people not having that access to the internet. Being cut off and not being able to communicate to other people about their situation. That's just, even if you don't have friends or family and you just not even having that socializing. That's a big one. It's really, really painful for people in that situation. So Annie Longfield, founder of Centre for Young Lives and a former Children's Commissioner, said 16 and 17-year-olds have been placed in a range of totally unsuitable semi-independent settings, including hotels for some time, but it was getting more extreme as the rising number of councils faced bankruptcy. She warned that county lines drug gangs were now targeting hotels where they knew vulnerable young people were living. We are serving up these vulnerable kids on a conveyor belt to those who want to exploit them, she said. Longfield said they were putting an already traumatized young person alone in an anonymous place where people can come and go all day and all night, and there is no support, making them more susceptible to grooming by gangs offering friendship and money. Yeah, and this is the thing. When people don't have anywhere else to go, this is where they'll turn to because they need something, anything in that situation. Their mind is so fragile that they will turn in that direction because they have absolutely nothing at that point. And it's an incredibly sad state of affairs, and it should not have to go down that route. But that is the direction what people will go to when they have absolutely nothing. When you are so physically and mentally broken, when you have literally no friends, no family, no one whatsoever, and someone offers you an olive branch, regardless of whatever that olive branch is, you're going to take it because you absolutely have nothing else to lose at that point. And this is exactly what these people are going to go down this road because they absolutely have nothing else to lose. Earlier this month, the Observer revealed that hundreds of vulnerable children, the majority of them under 16, were sent to illegal and unregulated homes in England in 2022-2023. In 2021, the government pledged to prohibit councils from housing children of 15 and under unregulated settings they did not provide care and consistent support. This pledge was not extended to those of 16 and over. Caroline Widow, director of Article 39, a campaign group for children in care, said, "None of this is accidental. The government has made it lawful for councils to put 16 and 17-year-olds in these settings with no adult supervision," she added. "The argument is that they are 16 so they can manage it on their own. But we know that to be anywhere near the care system in the first place, they are in a desperate state and the level of need is very high." Catherine Sachs-Jones, chief executive of Become, a charity that supports children in care, said it was seeing scandalous examples across the country of 16 and 17-year-olds in care being placed in hotels, bed and breakfast, and even some in cases of caravans and barges. She said these children are highly traumatized and vulnerable. The limitless test should always be, would you accept this for your own child? Sack-Jones acknowledged that the financial crisis at local council levels was driving these decisions, but she said the buck stops with the government. This is a national crisis and the reforms that we are seeing are piecemeals and too slow, and investment is nowhere near what is needed. The LGA said this weekend that keeping young people feeling safe is one of the most important roles a council plays. It did not deny that local authorities were placing teenagers in budget hotels. Councillor Louise Griffins, the chair of the LGA's Children and Young People's Board, said that with record numbers of children in care and significant pressures on budget, it's becoming increasingly difficult to ensure every young person gets the support they need. She said that the government needs to go further and faster on the tackling the market for children's social care placement. We also need to invest in the service that helps prevent young people coming into care in the first place. A spokesperson for the Department of Education has said that these reports are concerning. Since October 2023, it has been illegal to provide children in care or care leavers aged 16 and 17 with accommodation in a setting that is not registered with Ofsted, and we are distributing over £100 million funding to support local authorities with these reforms. Local authorities are responsible for providing safe, appropriate homes for children and are to be held to account for the quality of care they provide. When Ofsted believes a setting is operating without registration, it has the powers to investigate, including prosecuting when necessary. Again, this is all well and good, but there's no way for people in those situations to know how to report that or where to go to how to report that as well. It's all well and good saying this. It's all well and good saying that they've provided this amount of money, but you know, you hear that all the time from the government. They've provided this amount of money, and then you're saying to yourself, well, where is that money? Because we're not seeing it. You know, throwing money doesn't solve always. Throwing money at things doesn't solve the problems. We know it doesn't always solve the problem. There needs to be an action plan and a clear plan on this. And local councils need to be given support here by the government of what they can do to help support this situation. It's a case of just blaming the councils for these local authorities for the situation that these youngsters are in, and it's just not good enough. We're talking about England here. We're not talking about a country that is. We're not talking about with regards to we're not talking about other countries that are in much worse states than us. They have much worse economies than us, a much higher inflation and poorer society than us. We're talking about one of we're talking about one of the G7. We're one of the G7 nations, supposed to be one of the wealthiest nations on the planet, and we have kids in these situations. It's just not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. And I think everybody would agree with me that every youngster deserves the best care and support they can possibly get. But it seems like in this situation, according to this, they're just being dumped and left on the side because they have no plans for them. They don't know what to do. And it's not right in any way, shape, or form. But what do you guys think? What do you make of this story? What do you make of youngsters, 16 to 18-year-olds in these situations? Is this just the councils? Is this the government's fault? Is there a multitude of factors involved in this? Let me know your thoughts and more in the comment section down below. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. Greatly appreciated. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content there as well. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.